Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really crucial piece of legislation. Chapter 5 of the Factories Act of 1948, specifically sections 42 through 50. We're going to break down the exact welfare provisions you are legally required to provide in a factory. And, spoiler alert, it all depends on your size and demographics. Right off the bat, I gotta ask you, is your factory actually legally compliant? I bring this up because compliance under the Factories Act, well, it isn't some static one-size-fits-all checklist. It's a sliding scale based on your headcount. Literally, as your workforce grows, your legal obligations physically expand right along with it. So let's lock down what we actually mean by welfare in this context. We aren't talking about optional perks, like free coffee or office ping pong tables. Under Chapter 5, welfare means strict, non-negotiable statutory mandates. These are the absolute baselines, ensuring worker health, basic comfort, and human dignity during working hours. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll hit the universal basics, the 150 worker threshold, the 250 threshold, the rules for creches when you have more than 30 women, the big 500 milestone, and wrap it all up with a quick summary. All right, let's jump straight into Part 1, Universal Factory Welfare Basics. Starting with Section 42, Washing Facilities. The Act is crystal clear here. It explicitly demands not just clean, accessible washing areas, but strictly separate and adequately screened spaces for men and women. It's all about ensuring absolute privacy and dignity for everyone on the floor. Moving down the line, we hit Section 43, which gives state governments the authority to mandate proper clothing storage. Because let's be real, nobody wants to work a 10-hour shift in damp overalls. If workers have to change out of street clothes, or if the job just gets their gear soaked, the state can legally require you to provide a suitable, secure place to store and dry those clothes. Section 44 is pretty fascinating. It's all about minimizing fatigue. If your employees are obliged to work standing up, you absolutely must provide suitable sitting arrangements. Why? So they can actually grab a moment of rest during brief lulls in the shift. And get this. If a chief inspector thinks a specific standing job could actually be done just as efficiently sitting down, they can straight up order the factory to provide seating for everyone doing that task. Okay, Section 45 establishes your absolute medical baseline. Every single factory needs readily accessible first aid boxes. The magic ratio here is a minimum of 1 box for every 150 workers you ordinarily employ at any given time. Crucially, though, these boxes can only contain prescribed contents, so no random stuff tossed in. And they have to be managed by a specific, responsible person holding a valid first aid certificate. Now, hold on to that number 150, because that brings us to our first major numerical threshold. Part 2, scaling up to 150 workers. Under Section 47, once you hit that 150 worker mark, you're mandated to provide adequate restrooms, shelters, and a dedicated lunchroom, complete with drinking water. And here's the kicker. The moment that lunchroom is built, workers are officially prohibited from eating in the main manufacturing workrooms. Oh, and you can't just toss them in a dark closet. The law explicitly requires these spaces to be well lit, ventilated, and kept cool and clean. So what happens when you scale up even further and cross the 250 employee line? That brings us to Part 3, the 250 worker threshold. At this scale, Section 46 kicks in. If you ordinarily employ over 250 workers, the state can legally require you to provide a full-blown canteen. And the regulations are intense. You can't just set up a hot plate. The state dictates the construction standards, the furniture, the types of food, and even caps what you can charge for meals. On top of that, you have to form a managing committee that actually includes worker representatives. The employer also has to eat specific running costs so they aren't passed down to the workers. Next up, we need to pivot and look at a very specific demographic threshold, the number 30. Part 4, creches for working mothers. This is where Section 48 introduces some absolutely vital family welfare mandates. If your factory employs more than 30 women, you are legally required to provide a suitable room or rooms for their kids under the age of 6. Think about how progressive that actually is for a law passed back in 1948. These creches have to be well lit, ventilated, and run by women specifically trained in infant care. State governments can even mandate wash facilities, free milk, and most importantly, dedicated intervals during the workday for mothers to feed their children. All right, let's scale this all the way up to the massive enterprise level, 500 workers. Part 5, the 500 worker milestone. Building on those basic first aid rules from Section 45 earlier, Crossing the 500-worker threshold is a huge jump. A simple first aid box doesn't cut it anymore. You are now mandated to provide a fully equipped ambulance room. This space has to be a prescribed size, packed with prescribed medical equipment, and staffed by actual, qualified medical and nursing professionals who are on hand during all working hours. Furthermore, Section 49 states that at 500 or more workers, the occupier, meaning the person with ultimate control over the factory, must permanently employ dedicated welfare officers. The state government tells you exactly how many you need, what their qualifications must be, and their specific duties. Basically, you need full-time pros to manage all the statutory provisions we've been talking about. To close out Chapter 5, Section 50 gives the state government the power to enforce supplementary rules. They can grant exemptions to certain factories, sure, but only if alternative welfare arrangements are strictly maintained. It also allows the state to mandate that worker representatives be actively involved in managing these welfare systems. It's all about making sure the framework stays robust, transparent, and totally worker-inclusive. Let's put the whole shebang together and map headcount directly to the required facilities. So, for all factories, regardless of size, you need washing facilities, sitting arrangements, and first aid. Got more than 30 women? Add a creche. Surpass 150 total workers? You need dedicated restrooms and a lunchroom. Break the 250 mark, and a regulated canteen becomes mandatory. And finally, hit 500 workers, and you're required to provide an ambulance room and dedicated welfare officers. So, looking at these specific thresholds from Chapter 5 of the Factories Act, I want to leave you with this. Does your workplace actually measure up? As your headcount scales, are you staying ahead of the curve or falling behind your legal obligations? Take a hard look at your numbers, use this breakdown, and make sure you're truly supporting your workforce exactly as the law demands. Thanks for tuning into this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.